Hi everyone, my name is Anisha, and on behalf of Ideas, I'd like to welcome you all this Saturday evening on our webinar on chatbot development. We are really honored to have Kyle Polich with us, and he has studied computer science and he has focused on artificial intelligence in his graduate school. And he's the host of Data Skeptic, a podcaster about data science, statistics, machine learning, and AI, all through the eyes of scientific skepticism. Outside of the show, he's an advisor for a few early stage startups and consults with growth companies to deliver end-to-end data solutions. Kyle is a mentor for aspiring data scientists through his teachings with Thinkful, mentoring a new Met data science bootcamp, and also he offers one-on-one mentorship arrangements. Thank you so much, Kyle, this evening for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And before we start the discussion on the chatbot development, I would like to introduce Ideas to the attendees who are not familiar with our organization. So Ideas is an international data engineering and science association. It's a non-profit organization, and we aim at bridging the gap between academia and industry in the areas of AI, machine learning, data analysis, data engineering, and data science. And so we began in 2016, and we have come a long way covering different cities of the United States, and we have organized a plethora of data science conferences and the blockchain hackathons. As you see our timeline, we have organized a couple of events all throughout the states. And a recent event was in Los Angeles, the SoCal AI and Data Science Conference. And we aim to bring the leaders in the industry and exchange knowledge in the areas of data and build the community more. So here are some glimpses from our past events. This one is from a Chicago Blockchain Leadership Connect, and then New York, Pasadena, and this one is at USC. And then as you see, we try to cover a lot of universities, both on the East Coast and the West Coast, giving students the opportunity to mix with the industry leaders, and it's an exchange of knowledge. And these are some of the other conferences. And if you'd like to know more about us, you can visit our website and email us with any queries or connect with us on social media. So without any further ado, Kyle, please take over.
All right, thank you very much. Let me share my screen and we'll jump right in. All right, let me know when you've got it so I'm sure that we're all synced up. Oh, it seems like I may have lost your audio. Or maybe I've lost my...
Oh, yeah. No. You're good. I see your slides, yeah.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks everybody for coming. As we discussed a little earlier, I'm going to talk today about the chatbot that I'm going to be building in collaboration with the Ideas organization to go on their website. Presently, they don't have one. And when I showed the founder of Ideas the software solution I've been building, it seemed like a nice fit where we could develop something interesting and be kind of open source about it and show people what we're doing, and also provide visitors to that site some useful information through a chat platform. So this is a work in progress. We're going to launch soon, and I'll show you guys a little bit under the hood of what we're doing. So the general overview I'll go through today is I'm going to introduce chatbots, even though I know everybody has a sense what that is. I'll give you a bit of background on the technology that's employed. I'll talk about some use cases that are out there in industry. As you know, there's some obvious platforms like Alexa and stuff like that, but there's also some industry players. It's not the most common use case, but we'll look at some of them. Most importantly, we'll look at the platforms that are available. So if you wanted to build your own chatbot, what solutions are out there right now, either to do it from scratch or to use some services that are out there, and I'll give you a lay of the land on that. Then I'll show you some design tips, things I've learned building bots for a couple of different use cases, and correct and incorrect ways you want to structure them. They end up being built a little bit like programming, but slightly different mindset. So I'll share a few details there. Then I'll talk just briefly about more advanced chatbots, how we get into some of the natural language processing technology that's state of the art. And lastly, getting started on your own, how you might be able to build a chatbot with a simple solution I'm going to present. So quick note, what is the difference between a chatbot and generalized AI? Well, a chatbot I think of as more of a text or messaging-based technology. It doesn't have to do anything that we would call intelligent to be useful. In fact, I'm talking to a company right now that works in the financial space, and they want to build bots that can just help people do their expenses, remind them that a charge showed up on their credit card and it needs to be identified and filed away into the right category. And a chatbot could simply notice that, engage with the person who made the charge, and then update the information. It doesn't have to be something fancy, but it's just if it can come to them through a channel that's quick and easy, can be a useful technology. It doesn't have to be artificial general intelligence, although of course that's a long-term research objective for many people in this space. So what do we mean by chatbots? There's all these obvious personal assistant type tools, but there's a wide range of other technologies. Here's a few high-level concepts. I'm not going to go through in detail. I'll leave it up long enough if you guys want to read or screenshot. But these are some of the major areas that people are working on applying chatbots as a technology today. There's a whole cottage industry of people selling these solutions. I'm sure you've seen them where there's some sort of widget in the bottom of a website. And when you click that, a chat bubble pops out and you get extended details or a menu or different options. And it's just a more different sort of interface, essentially, that would complement that website or allow you to have a conversational event take place. In particular, out of that list, I thought I'd single out the concept of frequently asked questions, because this could be a really good student project if you wanted to build something for an organization you're a part of or a company. Most organizations, think of something like, a typical business, probably 80% of the questions a person has fit into one of 5 categories. If you're a bank, what's the number one question? What's my balance, most likely, or has a certain check cleared? Now, of course, if you want to ask, is the bank going to be able to do a wire transfer at 2 p.m. in the afternoon on a bank holiday or something, very specific like that? Unlikely a chatbot can handle it, but those are infrequent requests as well. So if there were a system that could pleasantly serve 80% of the capacity of a company, that could be a huge boost to customer service and that sort of things. And it seems like in most of the industrial applications, you have just a finite list of these concerns. So if you could identify them and build a bot that's highly tuned to just that 80% and being graceful in the way it passes people off for the things it can't handle, you could be delivering a simple but effective solution to a lot of different organizations. Another one I just wanted to throw in for the fun of it and maybe to challenge some people is, could we create something where we take text like this, and end up converting it into a SQL statement like this? If a chatbot were capable of doing this sort of process through, some mechanism you develop, this translation, you'd be really a powerful asset potentially to non-technical people in an organization. If people don't know how to write SQL, even though I recommend it to everybody, if you're not able to, but you're able to ask in natural language and get an answer without needing a report built or a dashboard set up, that could be a powerful enabling tool for a lot of analytics. One of the most famous examples, even though it's a few years old, is the 1-800-Flowers chatbot. It was highlighted during one of Mark Zuckerberg's keynotes, primarily because it was their sort of premier example of how to use the Facebook messaging service and the chatbot technology that integrates with that. This is a quick example of what that chatbot looks like. This is halfway into a conversation where I was going to place an order for some flowers. It's just running you through some specific questions. When would you like it to be delivered? And that's a pretty open-ended question. So the design here, they've decided, instead of giving you the ability to write an English sentence, which maybe the chatbot can parse out, maybe it can't, they're giving you some pre-selected options and maybe some ways to go into more detail. And then walks you through all these steps. So one of the great potentials here is that if the bot can handle odd use cases or get someone through this process faster, people might prefer it as an interface. Domino's and Pizza Hut have also launched bots. I think I'm showing you the Domino's one here. Similar story. This is the ordering process. Not really all that fancy, not a whole lot of natural language processing involved, just a systematic way that you can place an order for a pizza the same way you could on their website for many, many years. Here's the last stage of that, where it's just confirming payment and things like that. These are some real screenshots. And yeah, I got my pizza without too much trouble. At the end, it responded with a receipt for me and some details. So kind of a neat application servicing their primary business model of selling pizzas, obviously. Another area people have been exploring is product recommendations, especially when photo technology is integrated. Not just that images can show up here, but we could ask users to send a photo via their mobile device, and that could be parsed out pretty effectively with some of the available vision APIs that are out there. So you don't have to be a deep learning researcher to take advantage of that stuff. And to wind up our use cases, here's just some famous logos of people dabbling in this space. Some of them, like Domino's, have made it core to their primary business model. Other people, like Disney, are just using it on kind of a side, maybe an experimental phase. Not sure how long they'll be up to it, more in the marketing space. But everybody on here has at least been dabbling in the idea. So while they may not be ubiquitous, these chat systems are definitely of interest to a lot of industries, and certainly something people are looking at today. This is a little plot I put together describing some of my thoughts on how these systems have evolved. After all, there was a system when I was a lot younger called Movie Phone, where you could call on the phone and speak in English, or actually I think you had to hit buttons like 1 for this, 2 for that, and get information about the show times of movies near you. And that was, for whatever reason, that industry really embraced that technology, and for quite some time, Movie Phone was really the way to get information on movies. Something like schedule coordination has become a popular use case. Could have been worked on a while ago, just like Movie Phone, but as NLP technologies have advanced, these systems have been able to rely on some of those things and get a lot smarter in how they're working. Ultimately, probably one of the horizon goals people have is, could we build something that's like an elementary school tutoring system, able to work with anybody to teach them arithmetic or basic concepts, maybe even more advanced coursework as those systems expand. So those are certainly a high complexity of task, but that doesn't mean, and just because they're difficult doesn't mean someone's not going to tackle them. But there's a lot of things down in this range where the task you want to do, like ordering a pizza, is not so complex, and the usefulness of the current technology might be just enough to deploy something interesting without having an artificial general intelligence. So I wanted to separate out the interfaces, channels, platforms from the underlying tech. What I mean here is interfaces, channels, and platforms, sort of by what means do you speak with someone? We can have messaging conversations on Twitter, on Facebook Messenger, on Slack, on a website embedded icon, over SMS potentially. So those are what I think of as more of like the plumbing. That's, there's APIs for all the systems you can connect into, but at some point you need some system that is the underlying technology that decides, how do I process this natural language utterance, and what do I send back to that user that will be useful, and process it and that sort of thing. But what's really nice about, sorry, I've skipped a point here. There are becoming a lot of platform technologies, and I'll tell you more about these in a moment, that really federate all these systems. So you don't have to write your own integration for Facebook and for Slack and for all these places. If you pick a tool that deploys to all those places, you can just work on developing your chatbot, and all the plumbing can come for free. So there's a big landscape of stuff here. A couple I haven't mentioned already, like email, or actually don't know what GroupMe or Telegram are, but I guess those are popular services. This is a snapshot I pulled from Microsoft's bot framework. These are some of the channels they support, but there's a lot of other tools. I'll name drop some more as well. I think the most popular paths, though, are really on your website, on mobile apps, and then custom software integration. So people who've directly embedded these technologies in their web apps and things like that. WeChat, whatnot. These are popular solutions that people are on every day, and more and more chatbots seem to be popping up in those spaces. So why don't we have good chatbots already? And I say that to be kind of maybe a little bit deliberately controversial. I think people would argue we do have some good ones, but historically the reason chat hasn't taken off tremendously is because there's been a couple of roadblocks. First and foremost, natural language processing is a hard problem. There have been some incredible advancements in the research and the literature in the last 5 to 10 years or so especially in the last 5, and the way that these technologies have gotten out to the general public. But even still, this is a very cutting edge area, and it's not easy for your average developer to do. So you need someone who's both a skilled software engineer and a skilled NLP expert at times, and that's sometimes asking a lot. With the technology evolving so quickly as well, the best solutions either build on exactly what's available at the moment to a use case, or they're built in robust ways where they're constantly evolving the platform. Language problems are amongst the hardest that there are. This is another good reason why chatbots haven't become a ubiquitous solution just yet. You're probably familiar with Alan Turing's famous paper. Let's see which one. Should have written the name in here. I think it's on computing machines, or is it? Sorry, it's the one from Mind in 1950, and the name's slipping my mind at the moment. But anyway, it's where he puts forward the idea of the imitation game that some of you might know as the Turing test. That the ultimate test of a machine and whether or not it should be regarded as being artificially intelligent would be if it can win at this imitation game, to deceive a human judge into not being able to tell if it's talking to a machine as one player in the game, or a human as the other player in the game, where the human is acting normal and the machine is trying to convince the judge, the human judge, that they are a human being. That being one of the hardest tests of what a machine can do, naturally language problems like this are going to be hard. Sorry, I see there's a question, but having trouble navigating to it. Let me give it one more shot. Sorry. I'm going to come back to that in a minute then. I'll get the questions in a moment. Can't seem to pull them up right now, but we'll get back to that. Anyway, I think industry has been a little bit reluctant to embrace chatbots as well, primarily because I think people have been burned in the past. Most of the solutions rolled out haven't done well. There's been some big success stories like some of the ones I highlighted, but it's hard to build effective chatbots, partially because of the technology and partially because of the design of it. There aren't yet necessarily people who've mastered design, just the way that the earliest websites weren't necessarily well designed. People had to evolve and adapt to the form, but this is something that's coming around. And then lastly, there's several hard independent problems that have to be solved to bring a chatbot to market. But I have this slide not to discourage you, but to warn you. So let's talk a little bit now about the platforms that are out there. This is the general structure of a platform. It's something that sits in the middle like a nice middleware and connects to all these services you might want to provide some chat conversational agent to. And then it integrates with a bunch of things here on the right, depending on what platform you're talking about. Maybe it has custom services that a company or organization has built, like the way I'm sure a bank had to build something custom to answer questions about balances or transferring money. They also often integrate with a large number of these cognitive services or, intelligence APIs. Lots of different people are providing these under different names, but all the major cloud platforms from Amazon, Azure, and Google offer different solutions where for things like sentiment analysis, you can send them text. In the cloud, they will assess what the sentiment is, or maybe do name entity extraction for you, or provide different services like that, and send you back well-formatted metadata that you can parse. So many bot services will give you access to things like that. They may have some sort of stock similarity response, so you can do some very basic quick training or give templated examples that the bot can extrapolate on. And lastly, some of these services will give you a component that does human in the loop. So depending on the logic and how you code up your bot, they can pass information to or pass you on to a human user if maybe the bot has assessed that it doesn't have the capacity to service the request that the human conversation agent has. So this is sort of the form. There's lots of these platforms out there. First one I wanted to highlight was API.ai, completely web-based system. You can log in and build what they call intents that I'll talk more about later, encode different entities that you want your system to be familiar with, and then do some machine learning training in a guided way. So this is the type of system where if you invested a lot of time training it and testing it and understanding the boundaries of these platforms and where they succeed and where they fail, you can kind of develop an expertise in them. I wouldn't say they work perfectly out of the box, but they're definitely a cool choice and easy to play around with. Here's an example of, I'm using the Microsoft Bot Framework Channel Emulator to talk to a bot I built with their bot platform. I don't have the source code here, but you can see in their emulator what's neat. I'm just connecting to my local instance that's running. It's sharing some details about what the user isn't seeing behind the scenes of this formatted iframed option. And then we've also got a little debugger window so I can have all my messages coming up and start to build this out in a programmatic, iterative way. So if you're looking for something more technical than like the API.ai solution, the bot framework gives you a lot of these services. The Microsoft bot framework gives you a lot of these services, but provides you a programmatic way of working with them. I didn't cover, let's see, there's so many others here. I should have maybe put some slides in for. Amazon has a solution called Lex. And let's see, Google Cloud Compute has a system called Dialog Flow. Another note I wanted to mention that the field of natural language processing is evolving incredibly quickly. And there's been some major breakthroughs in my mind in the last couple, even weeks and months. A paper came out a few months ago called ELMO from the Allen Institute that defined a very generalized framework for doing natural language processing tests. More recently than that, Google put out a framework and an open source solution called BERT that I should have some slides in here for. BERT is a deep learning based technology that you can use pretty easily on your own. And what it does is allows you the framework to build training and brings a lot of pre-trained models to the table so that for generalized NLP tasks, things like co-reference resolution and sentiment analysis, starting from this one base that you can use called BERT, you can extend it into all these areas, and it does extremely successfully, beats most of the benchmarks and most of the other best-in-class solutions out there in a rather out-of-the-box fashion. So I expect to see a lot more advances along those lines, and it's even difficult to keep up with some of the literature of the major conferences because deep learning is having so many fast advancements in the natural language processing space. And by the way, we're currently doing a focus on the Data Skeptic podcast. Starting this January, we're going to be going for a couple months. We're covering the whole gamut of NLP. So if you're interested in a deep dive, check us out at dataskeptic.com and maybe listen to some of our podcasts. Anyway, a big part of bot building is, in my opinion, going to be intelligently consuming these cognitive services or using these algorithmic marketplaces where people provide you some of these tools for you to use. Take an example like sentiment analysis, common task where, as I mentioned earlier, you want to know, the sentiment of what a user has typed to you. You could invent your own sentiment analysis, sure, if you want to, and I could talk to you about the approaches with deep learning you might want to use to do that. For example, BERT would be a great place to start. However, almost all the major players and a lot of smaller companies are offering these very easy to use APIs and charging you next to nothing. You might get 10,000 classifications for $1 or even better rates than that. The prices are ludicrously small, especially for proof of concepts projects. So with that in mind, if these companies have commoditized it and they keep up to date with the latest and greatest literature and things like that, there's really no reason to fight with them. They've kind of mastered it. So consume these APIs, only reinvent the wheel or invent your own when you need to specialize. Here's a quick example of one of Google's natural language processing APIs. This is a post from the Data Skeptic blog where I did some analysis. I just pulled in one page for an episode we did on the PageRank algorithm. I took the metadata of the podcast, the description I had written out of what we talk about, and I sent that to the API, and here's the results I get back. So it's telling me some of the names and entities, the salience. So obviously it's figured out PageRank was the most important thing we talked about. Rather obvious because the word appears there. One kind of a false positive. I'd also say innovation's sort of a false positive. Not the strongest words, so you see these systems are, not necessarily the most intuitive thing, but it's identified both the authors and given me their Wikipedia page, major authors of the PageRank algorithm. It knows this is about Google. It's identified has something to do with search engines, even though I'm not sure if I said search engines anywhere. So how you process this data next, because in its raw format, it's not obvious how to use it, but certainly you've got a great head start taking advantage of some tools like these. Here's just a quick breakdown of the types of entities it gave me when I scanned, I think, 100 of our blog posts. Most things are in this other category, probably because our blog's about technology and methods and machine learning and stuff like that. We don't really talk about people that much, but person's number 2 and so on and so forth. So even though I get a lot of other, different applications may get a more diverse set of categories. So natural language processing in general is the extraction of useful structured information from natural language. Typically doing this on your own without using one of those APIs requires a really large corpus. That's what allows you to train models enough to be effective in some way. Statistical techniques had been winning, but recent, as I'd mentioned earlier, advances in deep learning have really been game changers. This seems to be the right machine learning approach to solve problems in language. And the use of very big data sets, like training on the entirety of Wikipedia or larger sets if you can get it, are the ways to build these pre-trained models that are taking over a lot of the interesting problems. Natural language generation, on the other hand, is how do you produce something useful that you want to share? So not the understanding, but the creation of text. In chatbots, largely I find this is done in a more templated Mad Lib fashion. But there is some interesting work going on in natural language generation. I'm not an expert in it, but I wanted to mention it as an important piece of the whole puzzle and something I hope to get into more this year. So if you want to get hands-on and you know enough Python to be dangerous, I would recommend one of these 6 places as being where you start. Dialogflow is Google's tool for training models, and you can do this pretty easily in the cloud as well. They have some nice APIs and some really effective demos on Colab set up to show you how to do this. Rasa is a technology, it's a Python library. The advantage of Rasa, and I'll show you it in more details in a moment, what it does, but it's able to develop the intent someone is looking for. So if you ask an open-ended phrase like, what is your favorite genre of movies? Well, people can say broad things there. They could say scary movies or horror movies or movies that with a lot of zombies in them. And those are 3 ways of kind of saying horror movies. Rasa can be trained to recognize a bunch of different varieties as being of the same class. So sort of like a traditional machine learning classification problem. But because when you build stuff, you often don't have a large corpora of labeled data, Rasa is a tool that might help you build a nice little model that's effective even on a small number of examples. And again, I'll show you some examples there. SpaCy is a pretty powerful general purpose library, Python library. Allen NLP, Stanford Core NLP, and NLTK are all much of the same. They each have different things they do well and whatnot. NLTK is a established older library that has more of a statistical bare bones kind of approach. Or I shouldn't say bare bones, I should say lower level functionality it gives you. Whereas spaCy gives you a little bit more machine learning baked in. Allen NLP and Stanford Core NLP tend to offer some sort of like best-in-class algorithms. So if you want off-the-shelf sentiment analysis or entity resolution, and you don't want to use one of the APIs, those are good places to go and start. I'm going to skip the design tips in an effort to keep time down because I want to do some hands-on stuff. So I'm going to jump into getting started. So here are my quick tips if you are interested in building your own chatbot. First of all, you've got to keep it simple, especially if you're just getting started. Building out, I'm sorry, give me one moment. Sorry. If you try and build some sort of general AI or something that does a huge number of different functionalities, it's unlikely you're going to build something people are able to work with. The most ambitious projects are the quickest ones to fail. So I would say start with some very simple task. You want to accomplish one thing and do it well. And then, if you're successful with it, go on to more. You really should have a fair measurable objective that you're considering, and also consider cannibalization and the novelty effect when you roll this out. So think of this if you worked at like an e-commerce store and you wanted to propose putting a chatbot on the website to help people find products or something like that. Well, they already had a way of doing that. Is yours going to make it easier or harder? Is it going, and you should probably A/B test that. See what do the conversion rates look like for people who do and don't have access to the chatbot. But even there, the cautionary tale is the novelty effect. something new on a website is going to attract a lot of curiosity from regular visitors. So just because your chatbot gets a lot of engagement initially doesn't necessarily mean people enjoy it. It may be they're just trying it. Acknowledging that the chatbot winning strategy has not yet been established. I think that's kind of one of my key guiding principles. I'm very excited about this space and working in it, but I know that you can't solve everything with a chatbot. So finding the right application is key. And then pursue, just get out there and keep trying and building stuff. So let's get on to building. Actually, I'm going to pull up the questions first here. Oh, somebody's saying API AI changed to Google Data Dialogflow. I guess maybe they've shut down API.ai now that Dialogflow is released. And a couple of notes on imitation game. Cool, thanks guys. Now I want to jump over and show you the quick start for Rasa. Let me move these so we can see. Rasa is the Python library I was mentioning earlier. Give me a moment. Sorry about the noise. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Our bird usually will be quiet about this time, but anyway, let's get back to Rasa. So Rasa, as I mentioned, Python is powered by Rasa. It's aimed around building a couple of concepts. The two ones are intents and entities, or at least the key ones. And the way you build a Rasa model is quite simple. You make this document of this easy to build format. Something you could do in Sublime Text or your favorite text editor of choice. It looks like a markdown document, and I guess technically it is, but the sort of second heading is the intent you want to apply. And then let's look at a better example here. So happy path, sad path 2, and say goodbye. That's the bot that's being built here in this demo. And it has this path of greet and then utter greet, mood and utter mood. So this kind of defines the structure, and these are different names of nodes you're building out. And then you give it a YAML file like this, where you identify all those intents, same as we saw above, the actions which are triggered by them. So the, sort of a rather natural language reading thing, even though it takes a minute to get your head around it as you look at it. And then last but not least, these templates, where for each of those intents, you give examples of or what you want to say, or sorry, I'm trying to rush through this and I'm doing a bad description of it. But I want to get on to the ideas bot in the second half of the time we have together. So I'll encourage you guys to go through this quick start. It's something you can do pretty easily in an afternoon, and you'll find that, sorry, here's the main section I was trying to get to. This is the primary way you train the model. So you say the greet intent and give it examples, the goodbye intent, give those examples, and so on and so forth. And with this as input, the system is able to train. So you can handwrite this, or maybe develop some sort of Python ETL script that pulls this from some database or whatever you have. And with this input, system does a pretty good job of matching what people say and then giving them the responses with the very simple encodings you see there. The tool I chose to use as we started building out the ideas bot, probably because I'm very biased here, but I'm going to use the Data Skeptic dialogue creation system. So this is a system we're using to build the next chatbot we're going to release at Data Skeptic. And we're live on a couple of private places that for customers we have, but it's a product that's in beta that we're happy to give accounts to. So if anyone actually wants to go to bots.dataskeptic.com, there's no restrictions or fees or anything like that at this point, and anybody that signs up gets grandfathered in. So if you're interested in being kind of a beta tester, we'd love to have you, and I'm happy to chat more about it. But you come and you log in. And I'm going to go to my bots, and I'm going to go to the ideas bot, where you're down here. So let's first talk about, so this is a bot in our system, and much like many of the other platforms, we organize bots into things called dialogues. Now that word has a little bit of a different meaning depending on the platform you look at, but my concept of a dialogue is a single kind of path in a conversation. So you can see from the ways I've named these that I have a singular idea in mind. Like the menu is obviously some navigation thing. Careers, you can guess what that's about. Classes. And I try and organize these things into very bite-sized types of conversations, and then I go architect those conversations. If this were an e-commerce platform, I would have one dialogue for get billing information, one for get shipping address, and so on and so forth. That way, if you can design one very specific conversation in a natural and controlled and effective way, assembling those like Lego blocks can make an effective chatbot. So you can see I'm using this coloring feature we have here to indicate the ones I'm done with, like I've completely built out menu and classes. I've got a little bit of work on these yellow ones, and these red ones I haven't started yet. That's just my choice and how I'm using the system. You can pick anything you like. It's just there to be handy. So let's talk to the menu. And after we talk to it, I'll show you how it's built. I have a bunch of Zoom stuff on my screen. I don't know if that's going to block for everyone. So I'm going to move this anyways. Let me know if you guys are having trouble seeing anything. All right. So when you first talk to the ideas chatbot, or at least the current rough draft we have is when it goes live, it might be different, but it's going to say, welcome to the Ideas Association. How can I help you? And gives you 4 options to choose from. So in this case, you could type out these options, but we also present them, since we're restricting what you're able to say, we present them as buttons as well. So let's go to classes and find out something from there. All right, we offer a weekly series of free online events, much like the one you're attending right now. Find out more here, and that's a link. So I'm going to pull that up just so you guys know what it is. It leads to that Eventbrite page, which is coming up a little slowly today for some reason. Here's the event we're currently attending. Here's some future events, blockchain and build optimal models. Oh, that sounds good. I might go to that one. And then would you like someone to contact you about registering for one of our online courses? Let's go ahead and say yes, so I can show you some functionality. Okay, would you prefer phone or email? Let's go with email. What's your email? Kyle@dataskeptic.com. And that's my real email if anybody wants to follow up. Before I do that, let's put in some nonsense and see what happens. Sorry, that doesn't look like an email address. Please try again or say give up. All right, I'll try again. Got it that time. Got it. We'll follow up to my email address, and then we're back to the front of the menu. So one concise trip down one single path seemed to handle things well. Let's go in and look at how I did that. That was the classes dialog. So I'm going to click here to go take a little zoom in and look at that. This is the primary page on our system where you create the chatbots themselves. So every dialog is organized into a series of dialog nodes. You can think of this like a decision tree almost. So this one has 4, and the first one is the start node here. Every node is composed of utterances and routes. So in this case, the utterances show up down here. This is the bubble we saw came up. If I wanted to edit that, I could click here and edit it. Comes up top. This one is a markdown one, so I use that because I wanted to have that link in there. Maybe I should make the word free and bold. I guess 2 stars is bold and markdown. And save it. And so now that's going to be the new utterance. The free is going to be bolded. So the chatbot says that, but then I have to decide how to handle it or how to respond to someone. So it says, would you like to be contacted? We go to the routing. The routing is where we look at what the person has said. So in this case, it goes top to bottom and says there's different match types. So we try and semantically match the word yes. Now, people might not say yes, even though I did. I could have said yeah, or sure, or okay, or stuff like that. So we offer a number of different options for how to match. I'll show you some other ones, but the semantic match basically says match to something kind of like this phrase. And behind the scenes, we're using that spacey library I told you about to satisfy this. So you can see if I type yeah, and I do a test, it says, oh, I think something might be buggy right now. We deployed some changes on Friday, so I don't know why this isn't working, but all of these should be matching to yeah. So that's something I'll have to file a ticket for. But anyway, There's also phrase matching, which is something you can use like regular expressions on. So we could say YE, and that would match to yes or yeah or all these types of things. But even though we support that, it's a little kludgy, and I prefer to do it this way. If it matches to that, we're going to go to the follow-up node. Otherwise, the next thing to match, which just matches all, says, I hope to see, this is if they didn't say yes or something like yes. It's just going to say, I hope to see you at one of our events, and then fail out as a success. So the more boring path, let's go to the follow-up path. I don't need to save those changes. Here in the follow-up path, you remember it says, would you prefer email or phone? And I said email, so let's see what happens. In this case, more routes. For phone, we go to phone. For email, we go to email. Otherwise, we just repeat. And I chose phone, I think, right? No, I chose email. In email, it asked me, what's your email address? And here the routing gets more interesting. So we have an email recognizer. You'll recall that the first time I typed some junk and it didn't match. So it wouldn't match to that junk message because the email recognizer will say that's not an email. So it skips to the next one. In this case, it said, well, did they say give up? No, they did not. So go to the next one where it says, sorry, that doesn't look like an email. Please try again or say give up. And then go to the email, which is where we are. So we start over. Then I gave it a real email address, as you'll recall. So it succeeds out and takes me back to the menu, but it does two other actions. It says immediately tell them that we're going to follow up at that email address. And this is a special code thing that's one of the more advanced topics for our system, but just a little markup language where you can insert things from the knowledge base, because when the email gets recognized, it gets stored there. And then also unbeknownst to you guys, I had it send me an email. So to my first one now, eventually, or from the actual organization who would follow up, this gives me the subject line and passes along the email. So the system we've built has a bunch of other little integrations where I could send a SMS message or put an attribute into the database or send an email. I'd use all kinds of fun stuff like that. So why don't we maybe walk through a more hands-on thing, and I can show you a little bit about how I think about building out bots. So let's go to the menu and let's add a new option here. In addition to conferences, classes, careers, and about us, let's edit this. And I'm going to throw in videos, because one of the things that's been really great about the conferences is even when I don't make it to all of the ideas conferences, there's always neat videos that go online. I can catch some of the great talks later. So I've now added a new button where videos will show up. And I'm going to move these out of the way so maybe we can see that. And then let's go over the routing to decide what happens. Now, because we're using this single select option, the system's automatically assigning us a route for videos. But right now, it's just going back to the menu. It's not going to do anything. Let's test it out just to see that. So videos doesn't do anything. What I might first do is just add an immediate response that says under construction. And as soon as I save that, we'll start getting that under construction message. But I want to do something more than that. So let's add a new node and build one from scratch called videos. Save it. Now notice I've got this warning because I haven't built it out yet. And then instead of going to the menu, that's going to go to videos. And I might as well delete the under construction message because we're about to go construct it. All right, save that. Into videos. For now, I'm just going to do something simple. What I really want to do eventually is ask the person some questions and then make a recommendation of a good video. Maybe if there's time left, I'll show you how to use our machine learning system to do that. But for now, I'm just going to say, here's our pick of the week video. And now we need to have a pick of the week video. So let's go to YouTube and search for ideas. And what's a good one? Oh, Neil's a good guy. He's a friend of mine. I'm going to take his video ID here. That's kind of the unique identifier that YouTube provides. And then I'm going to go, give me a second. Sorry, I had some tabs pop up. So first I'm going to say, here's our pick of the week. And then I'm deciding that Neil's video or Neil's talk is going to be our video of the week. So let's embed a YouTube video where I paste that video ID and I add it. And now let's save it and see what that looks like. And this, at least, I can't speak for every chatbot builder, but this is definitely my iteration loop. I'm constantly building and testing as I go because I find things aren't always super intuitive. Here's our pick of the week. I can start playing this if I'd like. I think I was at this talk. Anyway, good one. Now, what else can we do? It's kind of gone dead here. You know, they'll watch the video, obviously, but we'd like something else to happen. So maybe why don't we put a delay in? And after, I would probably put a minute or something like that, 60 seconds, or maybe, I don't know. But for now, just so you guys can see what I'm going for, let's add a 5-second delay. So we're going to have, let me close it so we can see this better. First, it's going to say, here's our pick, then the video. Then it's going to wait for 5 seconds. And then let's give them this slider option and say, from 1 to 10, please rate this video. OK, so we're going to ask them to rate the video. And what that means is when they rate it, it's going to be like they typed a number. So we've got to have some results for what do we do with that. So let's do a numeric range matching. We know it goes from 0 to 10. How about from 0 to 5, inclusive? We'll say an immediate response that says, not very high. We'll try to make better recommendations in the future. Oops. And then what if the person says anything 6 or above? Let's say, send an immediate response that says, glad you liked it. And why don't I make another? No, I'll keep it simple for now. Let's see. So we route 0 to 5, 6 to 10. And then after that, let's go back to the menu. Where's the menu? OK, so let's see how that plays out. Videos. Here's our pick, Neil's video. I'm going to start watching it. And 5 seconds have elapsed. So even though it would have been better to have that delayed more, for this one, it works out pretty nice. Now I'm going to, or for demo purposes, I'll give it an 8, let's say. Done. Glad you liked it. And then we're back to the menu here. Looks like I've got a question. Let me pull this over. Could you tell what framework you were using to build this one more time? Sure. This is a framework, the Data Skeptic dialogue creation system. If you go to bots.dataskeptic.com, as I mentioned, it's something that we're kind of building in beta right now. So there's no restriction on the sign up. If you want to join and play with it, you're free to do it. And we're also available on the Data Skeptic Slack channel to help you work with it if you bump into any trouble or anything like that. Main thing I want to talk about, though, is not just kind of plugging the platform, but to use this as a good example for the challenges about chatbot development. You can see this process was also kind of a little awkward, right? So we got the video, 3, 1004, 1005, 1000, that pops up. And, oh, I got to get that tooltip to go away. Now let's do below that. We said, oh, not very high, but we should probably do something more with it, you know, store that somewhere, make them another suggestion. So a lot more to build out here, but this gets me a good start on the video side. What we'll do eventually then, once the menu's done and all the other dialogues are built out, is we'll go and we'll grab this embed. This is just a script tag you can put in the header section of any HTML page, and that'll put the bot on the ideas site. So same way you can deploy yours if you want to play around with it. Let's see, I'm going to keep the questions front and center because getting to the end of my prepared material, want to give you guys a chance to ask any questions you have. I'm eager to hear if people are thinking about building these, or you know, if you've had any experience so far or had good or bad experience talking to chatbots on websites. How will implement your chatbot on your website? So on my own website, we're going to use React components. React is a framework, JavaScript or a Node framework that we built our site on, and We have some React components, so that makes things a little easier than that script tag, but both are good solutions. I'll talk a little bit more about the design then in the a few minutes we have left. You can see I've gone through and I've put in some of these topics. These are all the services I want the Ideas bot to add. These are ones I came up with. Maybe the team at Ideas will have some better concepts they want me to add as we get into finalizing it. But definitely stick to the core mission, helping people with careers and classes and things about the conferences. Maybe we'll even in the conferences section have a way where people can add the events to their calendar. Of course, join the mailing list and learn about the Staffing Service IO partnership that Ideas has for employers to get exposed to great candidates through the system. We're also going to put up some sort of survey. I don't know what will be in there, but surveys are an incredibly good use case for bots, primarily because you don't need a lot of fancy NLP, right? You're just sort of asking questions, getting some quick feedback. Generally, that's all you need for a good survey. So great use case there. Is there a way or a system for making the chatbot more intelligent over time? For instance, learning about a user from several conversations. I would say absolutely yes and no. So there are a lot of tools out there. I'll show you one of ours in our modeling system. One of the things we've built, this is for the new dataskeptic.com site we're going to be putting together. Here I've given some different intents of things you might want to know about it. So you might want to know about our episodes or about the store or our memberships or just about us, me or my co-host Linda, or about our blog. So I can go in here and I can maybe add more examples. So here's an example of something that's sort of the same idea as being a blog. I'll put that in this list. And as I build these up, I could retrain a model and have it get more intelligent and be able to recognize what the person has typed a little bit more, or maybe what their intent is. So here, maybe I'll give you a quick demo of how this works. I'll go into the forthcoming Data Skeptic bot. So here our menu goes in to use Rasa as a backend for this case, but all the different machine learning backends that we use have the same form, where you pick, I called it functions, as you might have seen in that other page. So functions is just the name I gave it. I could have called it anything else if I wanted to. These are the functions of the site. And then I get a list of which ones they are, so I can match to that. So episode finder will, or if you match to episodes, you'll go to episode finder, and so on and so forth. So we see that in action. Let's give this a quick test. What would you like to chat about? Find a good episode. I can talk about episodes of the podcast. And it says hello because I haven't built out that particular dialogue yet, but it was able to match and say, yes, I can talk about episodes of the podcast. So this way you can build out kind of a machine learning model independently. You can train it, test it. I want a shirt. Let's see if that'll match. That matches to the store, which is good because store is where you'd go if you wanted a shirt. So this sort of technology is what a lot of the more general open conversation intents are based on. A good question to wind up on here maybe. How to see the future use case for chatbots. So in my opinion, we're going to see an increase over time of more and more use cases as bots are more successful in the types of challenges you might want to face. Sales and e-commerce are at the top of my list. Personally, I find, if I go looking for something, a lot of times the Amazon search is all I need. If I want to buy some sort of tool, a new sander, a new saw blade, I pretty much type in the kind of specifications I need and I get there. But if I want to buy, a new toothbrush, and what might be interesting to me could be I travel a lot and I need something small, but I want an electric that maybe is USB because I don't want to carry around a funky base to charge it. Or maybe I want one that's extremely long battery life. Not everyone has the same preferences over it. It's not a commoditized thing. So a chatbot, or the typical approach today via the web, is to create a bunch of checkboxes and a lot of taxonomy stuff. Why couldn't a chatbot solve that for you? Just ask you, well, how can I narrow this down for you and take more abstract ideas, understand them, and sort the results in a better way. Because those are very confined domains where a lot of that metadata about the products is available, I think there's a big opportunity there. Customer support's a tough one, but I think one we're going to see a transition over the next 5 to 10 years. I say tough because companies, rightfully so, are scared of turning away customers with a bad chatbot. You know, losing a customer is not worth the savings you have by not employing a human chat agent. So you have to be careful. But for your typical needs, what's my balance kind of inquiries, certainly the case that chatbots are going to lead the way there. And as long as they can be smart enough to escalate those things they can't handle to a human agent, and they can solve maybe the 80% solution, we've got a great opportunity in industry to turn things around there. These are the top picks I came up with a little bit ago when I was asked to put together a list. But I think in a 6 months' time, I might update this as I see what other use cases are out there. Let's see, can chatbots learn to decide to add more buttons over time? Oh, that's an interesting idea. So that's all about design. There's not necessarily an existing platform that does this, but as a chatbot developer, what I found is I need to go and look at my logs quite a bit. So for example, in Data Skeptic chatbot that we're looking at here, I go back and I often look through the recent transcripts just to see what other people have typed. You know, someone was looking for pins earlier. These are, I guess, some tests. And I just kind of review what did people say to the bot and did I miss anything? And then I'll personally go and add a new button or something like that. Although there's a really neat opportunity to automate that. I think the way you would go about doing that is to first have some way of scoring whether or not you were able to find the intent and match the expectation, and then putting those you didn't match into some sort of bucket where either another machine learning process could look at them, or maybe there's some sort of human in the loop process. I don't think anyone has the most elegant solution there for doing some active learning stuff, but that's definitely something on the forefront. Another question about following up with me. Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions about chatbots. So I'm Kyle at Data Skeptic. You can just go to dataskeptic.com and find lots of ways to contact me there. So you can get on a Twitter. Actually, best bet might be to get on our Slack channel and DM me. You'll find me a lot more available there, but you can send us an email and stuff like that as well. We're also looking to feature chatbot projects on our blog. So if you end up building anything with our platform or with any of the other ones, we're pretty agnostic to the technology. We're interested in sharing stories of these use cases, design tips, and things like that. So eager to feature people's work as well. How to fire APIs using the entity collected. So I'm not sure if I totally answered that question, MV. If you want to post a follow-up to clarify, but APIs are usually just connected to with RESTful API calls. Most of them use JSON. So in Python, you could use a service like requests. I'll just do some quick something or other here. I'll write out some pseudocode just to give you a sense. Maybe this is what you're looking for. I do import requests, and then I do r equals request.get http api.com slash good, NLP, I don't know, entity and then maybe the response is import JSON, load the string from r.content.decode. I mean, this would be sort of your typical process for interacting with an API. A lot of the best APIs out there have really effective wrappers, and I'd recommend using those instead. They do a nicer job with OAuth and just handling the niceties and giving you a little bit more like formally typed stuff. So I use a collection of different APIs myself. We use some of the Microsoft Cognitive Services. We use some of the Google, I forget their general name for it, but they're cloud APIs. And a couple other smaller companies have services we use as well. can your platform only be available to deploy to HTML or native mobile apps as well as iOS? So my platform, it has an API. So in that sense, you can use it in mobile apps and iOS and stuff if you integrate with our API in a manner very similar to this. We also have a WebSocket solution coming and React components, like I mentioned, that are in a sort of a pre-beta phase. And then lastly, I'll just show you on the site here, we can connect to Slack and to Facebook. There's a way to do that. If anyone's interested in that, follow up with me and I'll walk you through how to do it. So, but our primary stuff are the iframe embed code with the script tag through Slack and through Facebook Messenger. How far are other languages behind working on chatbots? Are we limited to English still? Well, that's a good question. I'm not the best person to answer. Technology, it all kind of runs on Unicode. So in theory, all of these platforms out there can work with any language. It's just a matter of how you execute on them. But you're right, you should definitely go in a little skeptical because most of them, mine, for example, was developed in English for English. So there may be some weird character recognition thing that's a bug that needs to be fixed. And I think you'll find that in a lot of the platforms. But NLP technology, things like Dialogflow, they work great in other languages, I'm told. So as long as you have a large enough corpora for the model that you're extending, you're pretty much good to go.
Thank you. That was me asking. Are there any other questions? I think Kyle, pretty much you have answered every question on the chat.
Cool.
Well,
thanks
thank
for
you,
attending, everybody. Look for, I guess, on the ideas site in a couple of weeks or so. We're going to finish up the bot and get it live, and I'd love to have anybody's feedback, or if you have ideas for features, maybe we can mention you as an Easter egg somewhere as a contributor of one of the ideas.
Yeah, everybody thanking you, Kyle. Yeah, people, please feel free to follow up with Kyle on other interests if you have, and there's like a short poll just to know how you got to know about the webinar and how did you like it. I'm just launching it. Just a couple of questions, 3 questions. Please feel free to fill it.
I can't vote. Highly recommended.
Yeah, I think everybody got to learn a lot of new things. Thank you so much, Kyle, for your time today.
My pleasure. Hope to talk to you guys again soon.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. See you on the next webinar. Thank you. Bye. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.